And welcome to a very special reunion episode of Under the Radar. I am Hater, and I'm joined here by Ginger. Say hi, Ginger.
Hi, Ginger.
And a very special guest is also with us today. Say hi, special guest.
Hi, I'm John Smedley.
That's right.
No way!
We got Smed.
We finally got a dev on the podcast, guys.
It only took forever. And we've never had this dev on the podcast before. And especially not on April Fools. Anyways.
Yeah.
Wait, so before we continue, is this the first time we've had a dev on the podcast, or have we had on a dev on the podcast twice already before this?
No, this is definitely the first time we've had a dev on the podcast, because Wrel was not a dev last time. Depends on how you want to spin it.
Potato.
But
Yeah.
anyways, unfortunately, Iron Royd was not able to join us today. We've had a hell of a time trying to schedule this recording session, so we're gonna try to just do our best without him. It's kind of a special off-the-cuff episode anyway. It's gonna be kind of structured how we've usually done podcasts if you listened to them in the past with us before, but because we got Wrel here, we want to talk about the air changes very specifically. It's going to be a little different than normal. Next week's episode will be more back to our regular formula. So, without further ado, let's just jump right into it here. So, Wrel, everyone knows we just put the air changes on PTS last week. I believe it was like last Saturday, Sunday. And there's a lot of air changes in there, mainly to weapons and some passive systems and everything. So I think by now most people have kind of seen that and gotten an idea of what the changes are and what we like and don't like. So since there were a few changes that were pushed to PTS, I don't know, yesterday, the day before, very recently, but didn't have notes, we'll go over those in a minute. But first, let's talk about the first iteration a little bit of some of those things, that like the ones we tested on Sunday. I think the biggest thing on everyone's minds, coyotes. So I know why we changed coyotes how we did, but do you want to give a quick overview of why coyotes were changed as they were?
You know, why don't we let me just quickly run over like everything.
Yeah, it's cool too.
Yeah, okay. So the big, air changes, and they're primarily balance, not the control schemes. I don't know if you guys wanted to talk about later, but it's definitely a popular topic. But yeah, just balance changes. And one of the big pain points that we're trying to relieve is Tomcats. So Tomcats got an adjustment. They're being more oriented toward big game hunting, so gals and libs, rather than ESF killer. And Coyotes got some slight adjustments. It was overdone on the PTS, but they just, in my opinion, they needed some love, because there's a reason nobody flies with them, and it's not because it's not because they're incredibly well, whatever.
Underwhelming is what I'd say.
Yeah, they're underwhelming. And let's see. So nose guns got rebalanced. Originally, Vortec was going to get a small nerf to bring it in line with some of the other nose guns, but that seemed to be a very unpopular thing, and it was. And the reasoning behind it was good. The feedback was good. So instead, we're going to be buffing the VS and TR nose guns, and to a lesser degree the NC1 rotaries rather, and ammo capacities across the board got an increase, which is a big quality of life thing. Locust cannons are geared more toward long range engagements now, and they have something that finally lets them stand out a little bit among the other nose guns. And let's see what else. So the big change, one of the big changes, is that composite armor now soaks some ESF nose gun damage. And
that's a big one that people have been complaining about too, it seems. But
yeah, well, the feedback's been mixed. It's definitely been mixed. But we can break that down a little later. But and also it was applied to galaxies, which has been reverted. That's no longer the case. It was also applied to Valkyries, which made them immortal on test server, and that was a bug, and that's been fixed. Let's see what else. And the biggest thing is that engagement radar is on by default for all ESF. It's 600 meters. That's max rank, and that's a huge change, and that ties everything else together as well. Like it,
Yeah. So that's actually a good, because I was gonna go into some specifics, and that was one of them. So if you want to, we can talk about that real quick. Engagement radar being default. Some of the feedback I saw on the thread and just heard from others is people think it's a nerf to situational awareness, basically by uh, just giving you a freebie sort of tool to use to keep yourself aware of your surroundings. And uh, I don't know all the people who said it, but everyone was basically on the same line of it's a nerf situational awareness. It's not fair because like all the time people have spent practicing up till now, training themselves in that regard is kind of thrown out the window.
Yeah, and you can make that argument for anything about anything. It's something. Okay, so the fact of the matter is that something needs to change about making the new player experience better. And by the way, the changes are intended to not only encourage new player involvement or give them an easier time flying, but also to alleviate some concerns for veterans as well, and also to make varied or loadouts more varied, which this will definitely do in my opinion. But yeah, we can talk about that.
I have so many words for this.
The engagement radar?
Yeah.
Go for it before I go.
Oh, well, okay. I'll start out. I can see where people are coming from with the situational awareness nerf thing. Mostly because for me personally, I wouldn't word it that way. I would word it as more like, I think it's kind of fun to try to be sneaky sometimes, like try to kill your engines and sort of slowly descend onto people once you get close to them if they're not moving around much and things like that. And unless you're running stealth, that would be sort of out the window, but then you could run stealth, which would be interesting.
Yeah, I think people are glazing over that fact too.
Right.
Like you can still run stealth.
It gives you a direct reason to run stealth.
My big, and Wrel, I don't know if you've heard this before or if anyone's mentioned it to you in any of the discussion, but my big thing is I don't really see choosing between nanites and stealth and comp armor is something that I really want to have to do, because to me, like, I sort of view comp armor and stealth as these two like direct upgrades, whereas nanite auto repair is something that doesn't actually really make me any better in the game, but it's just something I do because having to land and repair is a big pain in the ass. Yeah. And like I would love to be like, well, do I want the extra armor increase from composite armor, or do I want to be sneaky and try to jump people? But I don't want to be like, or do I have to, sacrifice having to land constantly in order to do both of those things? That's where I'm at with it.
No, and I think most people, when they look at changes like this, it really caters to how you play the game. Like, how often do you see? I mean, actually, some people are in the camp of nanite auto repair, and then others are straight up stealth because they either don't last long in the air, or they're playing air to ground roles, or they're they just play differently, or they don't mind having to repair, or they're on a smaller server where getting taken down by a small pocket of enemies isn't as huge a deal as it maybe is on Emerald, or rather a large group of players. Like, because when you're in the air and on Emerald, you get hover over any sort of fight that has a significant population, you just get shredded, right? So some people know better to stay away from that. Others don't like to stay away from that. To me, it's a huge just preference thing. But yeah, no, I understand the inconvenience that people kind of bring to light.
Yeah, I mean, it is an inconvenience not having nanite auto repair, but I have been running stealth pretty much exclusively for the past many months now. At first it was hard not having nanites to repair, but since I'm always running Hornets whom I can, so I'm always running Hornets. If I'm trying to kill ground targets, I'm usually pretty low to the ground because you got to be within 450 meters for those to hit. So you got to be close, and usually I find them close enough to the ground to where I can escape well and repair really quickly because I can land quickly since I'm closer to the ground. It doesn't take me long. And then on top of that, I got fire suppression to help out. So for the most part, I haven't been inconvenienced by not having nanites. But that's a direct result of my play style too. So
That's true. And my piece is that that's really what it's about with nanite auto repair. Is it's about convenience, whereas the other two upgrades are about upgrading yourself in some way. Nanite auto repair is just this thing where you're like, well, these upgrades look cool, but I mean, I don't want to have to be constantly landing, especially if I like to fly around flight ceiling. So I guess I just have to go with nanites, you know. And that's the case for people. That's the case for me too, which is why I'm like, well, wow, I would really love this to happen. This seems like making that sort of dichotomy choice seems really cool, but I can't because I have to run nanites.
Yeah. Well, bringing it back a little bit to engagement radar as default. Personally, one of my arguments for the longest time is what plane like post World War II doesn't come equipped with radar, or just any modern plane is going to have radar. So that was like my biggest realism gripe about it, I guess, is that it's a plane. It should have radar built in. It shouldn't have to be something you upgrade on it. But that aside, I don't view it as much of a situational awareness nerf as others do. And if anyone see my videos on that, they know I use that phrase a lot, situational awareness. So I guess it's because, for one, stealth is a direct counter to it. So it's not like everyone getting the radar is gonna make it harder on everyone else. And two, it requires people to use it is the biggest thing. Like, yeah, your plane has radar now, but you have to be able to interpret that and use that, because if you don't, it's useless. It's just a tool. And if you don't use it, then what good is it? So
the tool to me is like, okay, so when you pull out of the warp gate, I mean, against a skillful pilot, there's not really a whole lot you can do except die, and like you don't know where they came from, and then you have to, you know, maybe you have enough nanites to pull again if you really wanted to, or you know, you're just turned off to the experience entirely, and you know, continue to just hate air. And like being able to, for new players to see, you know, that there are some threats, you know, in the area, and then they can either choose to approach it, in which case they'll learn that, you know, that, hey, this is probably a bad idea, you know, I should start running from things. Whereas if you didn't have that sort of crutch, and you know, it is a crutch, and then you end up at the same situation that kills off, you know, the love for Planet Mans even in the infantry game, where you can't develop the situational awareness because you aren't in the right situations to learn it. And that's like a new player is going to learn better when they are in a 60% situation where they get killed on occasion instead of being spawn camped, you know, nonstop. And you need to allow the player to have something that's more than a feeling of helplessness.
Yeah, and I think it does help having the radar for that.
And it's definitely a huge shakeup. It's a massive, massive shakeup. And this is only for ESF though. So if you fly lib, the only way you're affected is that ESF will know that you're around. You know, same for Galaxies, same for Valkyries. And I kind of like that aspect of it. I know you're in the camp of just that, you know, all vehicles should have engagement radar equipped. And the realism thing is you're going to get flag for it. Flag. For being a realism argument, but honestly, it does make a lot of sense, and it's as much as a balance thing as as anything else.
Yeah, and I'm on board for it for balance reasons, not for the realism reasons. That just makes me happy on a personal level.
Yeah,
but
yeah, I think you should specify that, because that, like, I totally agree with everything you're saying about that. I just like to ignore the realism argument when I hear it.
Yeah,
like,
you can ignore that.
I
say
like, that they're futuristic planes who have radar blocking technology, so there.
Exactly.
Right. That's obviously not useful in any way.
Just to wrap up the thing on the radar, at least, for experienced pilots who feel like it's a nerf to them in terms of like now everyone has access to it where they practice for it. Like I said, it's a tool you have to use to make it useful, and I guess more so, it's only for ESFs, obviously, and for the most part, 650 meters, I believe, is the range, right? The max range.
Yeah, it might be 600.
That's practically nothing in the air. That's gonna help newer pilots hopefully not get ganked and jumped as much and be able to react better to that. But that distance in the air is practically nothing. Remember, we've got the fastest vehicles in the game, and they can close that distance really quickly. So it doesn't really affect things overall that much unless everyone's hovering in one little spot within 650 meters of each other, and then it becomes like everyone is dealing with the same thing. But how often does that happen, especially on Emerald when there's flak all over the place? No, I just I mean, I agree with Wrel. It's a good change to help new players, and it may feel weird for the more experienced pilots, but I think that's something all of them can deal with. This really isn't that bad.
And I think that's sort of what it's all about right now, is finding places where new pilots can get better more quickly in a way that doesn't gimp veteran pilots. Like it's gonna happen. It's gonna somewhat undermine the skill ceiling, I guess, but you have to find the places where it does it the least.
I think this is one of those places where it does do it the least, and it's really just the best compromise to make overall. So
that depends. We'll see how much it actually helps new pilots too. I think it has to be played with, and I would. Oh my god, Wrel, nanite auto repair default. Just saying.
Honestly, I'm of the opinion that the vehicles should just regenerate over time.
I agree. I don't think it is like a strength in any way. I think it's just boring to have to land.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I don't know if I'd be able to convince the team of it, but it's annoying, and that it slows down my gameplay. Like if you're not getting touched every so often, then it makes sense that like you shouldn't have to run like engineers, in my opinion, if you want to be in a vehicle, or even bail assault if you're in ESF. It's like, I don't know.
You heard it here. Wrel condones bail assaulting.
Oh shit.
Yeah, no, I'll do it. I'll definitely do it. But no, dude, if make a thread on Reddit, and we can weigh the pros and cons. It's like a big. To me, it's like a quality of life thing. But I mean, the downside is that you would, you'd have to get rid of nanite auto repair, or you'd have to change it in some way, because you wouldn't want to suddenly like free up all those certs for people and just, help inundate the cert economy with, stuff. Because honestly, it comes down to monetization too.
That's
so
true.
We can't just give stuff away for free unless it's
Well, on top of that too, I mean, it'll apply to all vehicles, hopefully, obviously, if that happened. But if we're looking at specifically with ESFs, if you took nanite auto repair and made a default, then we're left with comp armor and stealth. So just two choices. For that slot.
That's boring.
And that makes it boring. So, I mean, I don't feel you could make nanites default on like planes without making a default on all vehicles. And if you did that, then you've got to balance all vehicles slots based on the fact that there's no longer nanite auto repair that goes there.
Well, heck,
that seems like the trouble.
Okay. First off, I disagree for two reasons. One, I think planes have to land, and since it takes so much more time to land a plane than to just get out of a tank and rep it, then you could make the argument that doing it only on planes is cool. And the other thing is, I don't think nanite actually matters from a gameplay perspective. Like, waiting 12 seconds without getting shot in a plane or a tank or anything, I don't think you need to rebalance around that. Like, that's barely gonna matter in terms of making the owner of the nanite auto repair actually better than whoever they're fighting.
I'm not saying necessarily a rebalance thing, just if it was on ESFs, then you just only have two slots to choose from, and I don't know, it's just less options is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, what if, you can just, what would happen if we just let it stack, right? If we gave vehicles a baseline repair and gave, nanite auto repair, just do it faster.
As a slot. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we can talk about, or we can, maybe tie it to a facility benefit, like, tech plants. If you own a tech plant, you have, your vehicles regenerate over time, and that would add some more, a little bit of strategic depth to the game, kind of, sort of.
That would be interesting. So you have to run nanite auto repair if you don't have a tech plant or something.
Right.
That would be cool. I think that would be cool. Yeah, because my thing, like, I think you could get around that and still make it an interesting option, because right now nanite auto repair doesn't actually help you out in combat, but maybe if you were to make it the current one default and then add a cert line that's like, hey, maybe now, I don't know, the occasional flak burst won't interrupt nanite auto repair, or like something that's a direct combat benefit like the other two things are, then you could have that sort of dichotomy of choice.
Yeah. And just the fact that you guys are in the mindset of that is that's really that's the most important thing, when trying to figure out a balance for anything, is to not, completely chop somebody off at the knees, or reduce not just the depth of the game, is the very little depth in loadout choices that we already have to begin with.
Yeah.
Well, going off that kind of, the other two slot choices there now, stealth and comp armor. I don't think stealth actually got a change, did it? Just that coyotes are not affected by stealth is really the only.
Yeah, coyotes and hyenas won't. They'll ignore stealth now properly.
So that means basically stealth now is a direct counter to the fact that every ESF has engagement radar. So that's more of a direct reason to use it. It still has the lock-on time reduction, which is the main reason I flew with it. So, I mean, now that it's great that it counters radar, I still probably would primarily fly with it for that reason.
And rotaries getting a buff will kind of play into it too, I think.
And that's kind of where comp armor comes in too. Just
there's definitely going to be some.
The resists. So it's supposed to be 10%, right? The comp armor max rank 10% resistance to ESF nose guns. It still has the 30% to flak and 10% to small arms, and in addition, it's now got 10% to nose gun resist.
That's right. And just for everybody's awareness, that change, don't know if it's on the PTS yet. It was originally resisting, like when we did our playtest, too much damage. So things definitely felt off, and it probably explains why I was able to slap you around a little bit.
Yeah, I was told yesterday by a few people who were testing that it still feels like it resists a lot, so I'm not sure if it got to PTS with the most recent patch there.
Yeah, it probably didn't.
Yeah. So, but just kind of conceptually talking about that, you have comp armor now that, for the most part, I don't know anybody who ran that before. Like, it was always stealth or nanites, usually nanites, and then there was, the few people who would run stealth. So now comp armor's kind of got a competitive reason to be used, like.
I tried so hard to run comp armor. I mean, I have it maxed out, and it's like, maybe I can use it in a grounded, air to ground roll. It's like, no, not really. I mean, stealth is better, and auto repair is just better. It needed something.
Yeah, when any ASF is up against like just two sources of flak or just any ground to air, it's putting comp armor on is like taking a piece of paper and replacing it with construction paper. It's really not going to help. I tried to run it when I would do air to ground loadouts, and the small arms reduction isn't that much. The flak is kind of okay, but like I said, when you've got even two sources, ESS are paper thin in the first place, so 30% resist at best will help you get away, barely. And then you have to land and repair anyway, because now you don't have nanites. And on top of that, it didn't help against lock-ons, so you would have really quick locks from ground to air locks. And usually that, if you find flak, or even two sources of flak, there's probably ground locks in the area too. So, I mean, comp armor doesn't give you enough to justify running it over the convenience of nanites, or like what I said, I run a vehicle stealth for, the lock-on time reduction, because I feel I'm good enough to hide from flak and escape flak quickly enough to where it's not a problem, but lock-ons could be. So they take an extra second to lock on. That's just makes it much easier to escape. So even stealth kind of outshone comp armor in that way. So now that it has the ESF nose gun resistance, what do you guys think? Is 10% enough, and is that going to help?
I'll definitely run it. I mean, right now I run NAR almost exclusively, and it's not because I don't survive long enough for it to actually matter either way. I just happen to run it because I happen to run it. But with composite armor like negating my lack of skill versus enemy aircraft, I think it'll be super helpful because I mean I actually I eat flak a lot, and I probably shouldn't, but that
I
just
eat flak flakes for breakfast.
yeah, exactly. So that'll actually help me, I think.
Yeah, I think it'll be good. I mean, since it's not the resist value isn't working correctly still, it's been hard to test, I guess, but I think 10% is good for comp armor. I'm hoping it'll be competitive now. I personally probably still won't run it. I just like stealth more, but I guess I could be convinced to run it more, or
and that's
a
the
little
popular. Well, I don't want to say that that's a popular opinion, but it's definitely a very common opinion. Is some people are saying that stealth is going to be exclusive now, and like you'll have to run it, and then other people are saying that no, composite armor, like that's a big change to to dogfighting, and it's gonna completely throw off the balance or whatever, and the fact that you have both those conflicting opinions to me is that's just a good sign.
Yep.
So you'll really only know in live situations, and then people will adapt and get a feel for it and that sort of thing. So yeah, composite will definitely be for me, I think.
And that's not a big deal either. Like if everyone runs stealth, buff composite, like, easy enough.
Yeah.
So
in concept. I don't know. I feel like buffing composite past what it is now.
Yeah, I mean,
could be too much.
I feel like composite's probably in the right place, but
I feel like it's right around the right spot right now. So hopefully it'll stay like that. And I don't know. I'd like looking at it now. I think stealth and comp armor are going to be pretty well balanced.
Yeah.
I still think people are overestimating the impact that engagement radar is going to have. So, but we already talked about that. Anyways, let's move on to coyotes real quick. Coyotes and hyenas, I guess, since they're basically one and the same. Some people have asked if it's better for comp armor to resist coyotes and hyenas, or even tomcats as well, instead of a nose gun resistance. I know you and I have talked about that, Wrel, but do you want to talk about why?
Yeah,
it's not that.
No, I was thinking about that as well. Honestly, and like composite armor, I would love to not get gibbed by Titan AP rounds or Dalton rounds, and so there's definitely a lot of concepts, but I think in order to really make it competitive as a suit or as a slot option would be it just made sense to do it as a counter to the things that are going to be like hunting you anyway, especially with the engagement radar change, and we'll see how many people actually start using coyotes, because tomcats are basically, let's be honest, nobody's going to use them for air-to-air combat against ESF anymore.
Probably.
Yeah, probably. And honestly, the tomcat range might need to be increased so that you aren't at such risk to dealing with the bigger targets as well. Galaxies can still shred ESF if they're manned. Liberators can still they're still dangerous. So we'll have to tune for that. But yeah, no, I don't know. It's something that I gave some thought, and it just didn't feel like it would be significant enough,
Yeah. Well, that's just I guess the biggest thing I've heard in terms of coyotes and comp armor. Coyotes on their own have a little more, but I think people will hopefully come around and we'll get things balanced, and comp armor will stay, the nose gun resist. It's just a lot of people think that coyotes were overbuffed, and that it'd be better if comp armor, countered missiles more than it countered nose gun resists. But on top of that, people probably didn't notice that the fact that coyotes and hyenas got, the extra change the other day. So we can probably talk about that now. What happened to coyotes and hyenas?
Okay, so they were definitely too strong on test. And it's funny because it was a very little tweak to their acceleration. And my biggest issue with coyotes on live was always that you couldn't really use them outside of just like I would just basically be humping people and dumping coyotes into them, because that's what they were good for, just the bum rushing, and it was decent to pair them with a nose gun, but they felt too much like a primary. It's and none of that has changed, but it felt like we gave them too much range, you know,
Yeah, I think that was
on
the biggest thing.
BTS. So, and they're definitely easier to land. They were still negated by stealth, but yeah, it doesn't make sense to have a hard counter like that, you know,
Yeah,
against
I
a
agree. I hate it,
specific
but I
weapon type.
agree.
Yeah. So what ended up happening, and I believe all these changes, or all the Coyote changes made it to test, is that the max projectile velocity got toned down, but it kept the some of the acceleration, and that might still need to be tweaked a little bit, but it does feel better. Also, the reload time got increased, and this was pretty big for me. On live, it actually feels pretty close to right for me with the Coyotes because I don't have them upgraded. But when I went to PTS,
Yeah.
upgraded them, it was like, oh well, why even switch to my nose gun?
It's that slot to decrease that reload time that's big because it's a full second fully surted, and I think
Yeah.
that I don't know.
Is it a full
Do you
second?
think
I thought it was
it's a
half
full
a second.
Last I looked, it was a full second. At least it is on live, and
Okay.
I think it still is on PTS. But I think that brings it down to 3.5 seconds, or is it 4.5 with it equipped? I can't remember exactly.
Well, if it's a second, it would be 3.5 now, because I bumped him up to 4.5 seconds for the baseline reload. So that's interesting. Might
Yeah.
consider looking at the upgrade and just toning that back, because
I think that might
other
be
weapons
a good
don't
way to
have.
go.
Yeah, other weapons don't usually get bumped up that much.
I think the Hornets are the only thing that are close, but since they have also just a longer base reload as well, when you add that second on, it's I think still 4 seconds at least.
Hornets they only shave
Or
0.5
is it
seconds off.
So that I mean, that's
Really? I
even
thought they
better
shaved
than-
one
No, I don't think so.
with the
I
circle.
might be wrong.
Here, I can double check now.
I don't know. I've been
I'll go to the wiki.
running Hornets forever. I'm so used to having it on and how they reload that I just don't I don't even remember the numbers. But as far as Coyotes go, I mean, their base reload isn't so bad, but it's when you stack that extra reload speed on there that it pushes into that territory of okay, this reloads fast enough to basically be your primary weapon. And
Yeah.
I think that's where people are worried, is because they become so spammable. You don't need a nose gun like at all.
And also explained difference in opinion too. That I mean, not only that I had, going from live to going to test, but also the just the kind of the feedback that I was getting about him too. And it made a lot more sense what people were saying once we actually got to test. So yeah, that's something I can to look into more. But they do feel better in my opinion on PTS right now, and I would be
Other than the reload
interested in
speed,
seeing the
they're
feedback.
I personally think that long reload speeds are the right way to tackle Coyotes, just because I think their whole basically point is to, I'm going to say undermine, maybe it's too strong of a word, but undermine the sort of hover play style by being slightly locking on. So basically, if you're fighting in hover, it's hard to counter them. I think it's okay for that to happen for a second, especially because you have to be like pretty close or up in someone's face to use them. It's when it starts to become a primary weapon that it's like, okay, this is just,
And I think that was the original concern when they first came out,
Yeah.
like way back when too. And then they got nerfed enough to where they weren't as much of an issue, but then they also became obsolete because of that. So
Right.
You're
I
right,
think
by the way,
having to be this,
Hater,
like-
it is it's the second for Hornets as well.
oh, it is cool. Don't nerf that, please.
Well, no, that was like, when we talked about it, that would be my like go-to change for Hornets would be the reload
Yeah.
time. Because
Maybe it's better to take not off the base reload time, but the upgrade slot
shave it off the
reload
upgrade.
time.
Yeah, that actually makes some sense.
Yeah,
Touch
that's
Hornets.
cool too.
Thing about Hornets is they're like insanely overpowered, but nobody runs them. Like,
No, everyone's
don't know
running
it
them
yet.
now.
Really?
Nobody used to.
Yeah, welcome back, Ginger.
Oh.
Yeah,
all
I
right.
made them
People figured
popular
it out.
again.
Good job. And Server Smash.
Kinda.
Nice.
Mostly the videos I put out, at least as far as air to air goes. But they did kind of come into the spotlight because they are essentially better at rocket pods at everything air to ground now. I mean, not as great against infantry, but at least
Right.
on Emerald, there's so much freaking flak that you're not going to be able to get a full rocket salvo off without getting destroyed. So you might as well just go with the Hornets for that quick alpha strike, get a kill or two if you're lucky, and just fly away. But their anti-vehicle ability is really what brought them center stage. So, anyways, Hornets, unfortunately, fortunately for me, but they're not in the patches yet, so we don't have to talk about them. Yes.
Hmm.
I think the last big one was rotaries. Originally, it was the Vortex that was going to get a slight nerf, but everyone, I think rightly so, was like, yeah. Vortex doesn't really need a nerf. And yeah, now that I kind of look at it more, I agree with that. And so the rotaries, the other rotaries, the VS one is getting renamed, by the way, to the Maelstrom, and then the Mosquito M18 rotary. Both of those got buffed. I think the Maelstrom actually got a slight velocity nerf, but otherwise buffed. And then the rotary got, I believe, more bullets and a little more damage. Correct?
The right. So all the rotaries have gotten a little bit of higher magazine size. It's +3 for VS, +3 for TR, and +2 for NC.
Okay.
Interesting.
And the damage has got increased for VS and TR, but the VS version is not it's not on PTS yet. But basically the guideline was to really kind of bring them in. Like Vortec was far and away better as far as damage per second, and it doesn't normally play out that way unless you're good at rushing or unless you sneak up on people, because then you could one clip them or whatever. But there also wasn't a lot of flexibility there either. So increasing the magazine size bumps up the flexibility a little bit. We're keeping the damage, especially with the changes to engagement radar. That'll shift things too. It'll shift when you'd want to use rotaries a little bit more, and also the VS and the TR are now within like 30% ish in upgrade in terms of damage per second than the baseline nose guns.
Hopefully that helps, because everyone was saying buff the other rotaries, because they're essentially outclassed by the defaults in just about every way. The only thing the rotaries had was their rate of fire, which was great, but because their range wasn't great for their max damage, then like I was saying before, distance in the air between targets, it's nothing. Distance can be closed fast, and it can be expanded quickly. So people can really easily get out of that very, very small minimum damage range for rotaries.
When did that become the case? The default nose guns? Because I think I missed a memo somewhere. Because back when, I think maybe even back when we had our first podcast or whatever, I think people were still running rotaries nonstop.
Well,
so
go ahead.
People, the reason why primary started going into the limelight is because when you're in an actual hover fight between two people, which is most of how dogfights turn out on live, it's way easier to gain distance away from somebody than it is to close it, because you're flying backwards and hover constantly. Like, you actually have way more options in terms of getting away from someone than you do in terms of trying to close the gap, and just breaking cover and rushing them is suicide.
Yeah, if you rush them, then you're going closer and you're making yourself a much easier target, so that just helps them.
So I kind of wonder if some of that came from the afterburner buff.
Maybe.
Like how everybody got it for free.
A little bit it did, actually, yeah.
Yeah, that could potentially be it.
I've been rewatching our podcast just like on the day of, and I remember we talked about that, how the afterburner changes kind of indirectly push things in that direction. And then when you throw in something like the Scythe with that thin profile and the current iteration of the Saren being as accurate as it is,
right.
Scythes are almost always going to try to fight at range.
Mm-hmm.
And Mossies and Vortex, or the Mossies and Reavers, they have to get in close with either their Vortex or the M18 and hope for the best, or try to fight at range, and you can't do that well with those, so you have to go with your default too.
Like, pretty much optimal. Scythes need to gain distance, Reavers need to close distance, and Mosquitoes need to play to the opposite of whoever they're fighting. So Mosquitoes need to get in close against Scythes and stay far away from Reavers, because they can't beat either one of them at their own game. The thing with rotaries right now is I kind of think that sort of the way air works right now, there's no way to make them good, because I think they're sort of on this sliding scale of mediocrity, where if you buff them, they're only good at things that aren't super conducive to learning. I think there's really 3 reasons to use the rotary. One of them is in a furball, which basically, let's face it, never happens on live.
Yeah, and it happens on Emerald often enough. Not
If
as
you're-
much as
if-
it used to.
And
but
probably more so, just given the patches now.
It's
I mean-
always been a pretty prominent thing on Emerald for the most part.
I have
That's
yet
just
to see any on Emerald.
It's not as much now, but I mean, I rarely find solo pilots.
Yeah, well, I
That's
mean,
just me, though.
furballs happen, and if you're in an air squad, then if
Yeah.
you see another air squad, a furball's going to happen. But air squads are sort of another problem of their own, so for now, I'm just going to leave that out. The other two reasons why you would use them are killing someone in a hover fight who isn't good enough at the game to know to gain distance from you, and the third reason is alpha striking someone. So
Yeah.
basically, the two main reasons that make them better are two
Rare
things that aren't
situations.
helpful, like that are things that no one wants them to be good at: alpha striking people and killing new players. So if you make them better at doing their jobs aren't like, they're not good, they're not helpful to the game environment. Maybe alpha striking could be a cool mechanic once engagement radar happens, but right now I think they're sort of in this place where it's like the advantages that they have are really only kind of stuff that nobody wants to deal with.
The only changes that I was afraid of an overbuff with the rotaries, but yeah, we'll see how it plays out on live first. But if we wanted to make them, like, if they're still not enjoyable to use, if they're don't feel like they have their own kind of role, then we can bump out the max damage range a bit. That's really the only area that you kind of want to continue to extend, I guess. But even then, there's a big fear of overriding the defaults.
Yeah, and we don't want that either, because the defaults,
Right.
I mean, they're great because they're default. Everyone can use them, and they're good guns. So it's good that everyone has access to that. So I don't want to override them, but I think I've talked to you about it before, Wrel, especially on the Mosquito. The big thing, most people would run the Needler over the rotaries because their damage value is exactly the same within the minimum damage range of the rotary, and with the rotary only having fire rate going for it. And so, like we were talking about, it's harder to close the gap and do well. You're going to stick with the Needler since it's going to be better at range, and it's essentially as good up close with only less rate of fire. But it's still got better rate of fire than the other 2SF nose guns since it's a TR thing. So, really the rotaries suffer most from being very, very short range. And hopefully this helps them. But we'll see. Yeah, okay. So that was the last major topic. So two last things I wanted to go over real quick are kind of I don't know if we've talked about we've talked about dogfighting frames. So let's go over that. Ideas to make dogfighting our frame useful.
God.
I know, right? That's been the hardest thing to come up with, to be honest.
The only thing that I can even think of is uncapping the dive velocity. Again, I know sites used to have that. I don't know if it works in the data, and it definitely wouldn't make sense to do that over, a racer, right? It would.
Yeah.
It just feels more like a racer trait, but I don't know. Yeah, dogfighting is weird. I use it on my Reaver, but it's kind of funny because I really am not a fan of hover, but on PTS, hover was the way to go. With all the pilots, but yeah, on general live play, I don't like it. I don't use it a whole lot, but also I don't care enough to adjust my settings to be super
tryhard.
Super tryhard basically.
That's fine. That's fair.
We'll gloss over the fact that you're a scrub with the dogfighting frame on your Reaver, but
yeah.
Hey, I mean, X made a very stubborn but not valid at all argument for dogfighting. No, I think dogfighting needs a change.
We'll go into too much depth, but for the most part, I've always said, the reason I run hover over everything else, but especially dogfighting, is I can do just about everything with hover that I could do with dogfighting. I have to do it a little differently, but I can basically attain the same results. And the thing is, what dogfighting does do, it really just doesn't feel like enough compared to how much full rank hover and full rank racer give you now.
Yeah.
So it's hard. it's been hard thinking of something to give dogfighting that doesn't detract from what the other two give you.
Maybe
What
Still
if
make it competitive.
what if it gave you more afterburner capacity?
Potentially, that could be
Maybe.
something. I had one idea down that someone mentioned. I think it was I guess the acceleration from both from hover mode to get into straight flight mode and reverse, as well as just your straight up acceleration with or without afterburner.
I like the afterburner idea. I would maybe do it so that right now, when you first hit afterburner, there's a flat cost of afterburner that it'll take away the second you hit the button. So if you like tap shift a couple times, your afterburner will totally go away.
Yeah.
Maybe
get rid of
reduce
that?
or get rid of it for dogfighting. Or another idea I had, which would probably be really hard to do, is give people sort of more thruster control so that they can kind of do things in their ESF that other people can't in a dogfight, but at the same time it would be slower because you don't have hover.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'll I don't know. I'll look at the settings, like vehicle settings in general. That the handling is like there's
It's
like
weird.
60 something values that control how vehicles move. It's kind of intricate, and yeah, the vehicle design aspect of the game I'm not fully keen on yet. Still exploring some things, and yeah, so I would have to make sense of it. But if there's anything that can be tweaked through that, I'll look into, and then I'll talk to you guys individually.
Yeah. My only other thing, it kind of goes with that, depending on how we would go with dogfighting, but something I've wanted for the longest time is cert line for the fuel tanks, and I don't mean like the one they used to have, where it's just you cert it, you get more fuel, hooray. But specific ones you have to specialize in. So like a cert line that gives you more overall fuel, so you can afterburn longer. One that gives you, I guess, a better fuel, so you can burn faster, but for a short amount of time, etc. Things like that. What do you think about maybe doing that
Adding it as
to the fuel tanks on the wings?
honestly, if that were to happen, and this is just me being realistic, but like we'd create it as a new weapon, and then then you'd have to unlock it for 1,000 certs, and then rank it up or whatever. But I mean, it's not undoable, or it's not doable. I would have to think about it. My concern with it is just that so if you have like a thruster that moves too fast, you create rubber banding issues. And from what I was told, this might have been changed, over the years or whatever. That Mossy Mossy's were about like as fast as you'd ever want something to be in the air. So I don't know.
Well,
like
I mean,
capacity increase.
Reaver's going to attain a faster max speed with
Yeah, that's true.
afterburners is the thing. So, and Racer, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I just like the idea of having the fuel pods be a little bit more than just you can go faster longer. And it wouldn't be like huge buffs. It'd be like maybe 10-15% more fuel. Just a little bit of a buff, not too much.
You had another idea, like when this first happened, where, like, I think the idea you originally had was one of them was you get more fuel, and then another one was your fuel regenerates faster. So,
That
like,
too,
one
yeah.
situation is, you want to be able to use more fuel in a dogfight and be able to jump around more often, and then another is you want to have a full tank to just disengage whatever the hell you want. So,
Yeah, that's definitely something we can do.
Yeah, I've wanted that
I
for
like
so
that.
long. So I was when the original cert line came out for the fuel tanks, where it was just the single cert line, I was severely disappointed. I was a little more vocal about the Banshee and rotary changes at the time, Higby. But yeah, it would be nice to see that. It's kind of a quality of life, but I mean it does add a little more depth to them instead of just being straight up fuel. And it doesn't. I feel like if you do cert lines right for that, it doesn't detract from them either or anything else. It just gives you a little extra potentially. So definitely not a priority, I would say though.
The way I'm envisioning it, and like what we'd probably by the team is just to make new weapons or new wing mounts out of them, and then sell them that way. I would that'd actually be pretty cool. I would like that because that would change up people's playstyle a lot as well.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Maybe I'll draft.
Did you know? I think there's a lot to be played with. Like, Wrel, did you know that it takes up, if you remember when I was talking about like the single time you hit shift, it takes away a flat amount of afterburner.
Yeah.
It takes away more if you're in hover.
That was a change that was made intentionally.
Yeah, it was. So I don't know.
So-
Maybe with the different variants, there could be stuff you could play with that too,
Yeah.
A
maybe.
hover-friendly fuel.
or racer-friendly. Well, I guess I don't know if Tomcats get nerfed. Hover is sort of like an essential part, so maybe going like a not hover spec would not be ultimately helpful. But well, I don't know. I don't know. Haven't
I'll
thought
look
too much
into it.
about it. Anyway, should
All
we
right.
move on?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, should I just do my topics?
Yes.
So, all right. Let's see. We pretty much talked about most of the stuff I had. I had a positive and negative and interesting sections, most of which we already talked about. One of the positive things I liked was the rotary ammo cap. Like, thank you, my God. Just gonna mention that really quick. The ammo capacity increase from
Yeah.
ESF rotaries, that just
Yeah.
so
It's very
needed to
nice.
happen. So sort of a philosophical point I had was with the Tomcat nerf. I've been trying lately to sort of see Tomcats from the other end of things, where ace pilots hate Tomcats, obviously, because they totally undermined this hover meta that took them forever to learn and that they spend all this time trying to perfect. But casual players who only kind of get in an ESF every now and then run Tomcats because it's sort of the only way they have to actually counteract that. Like you were talking about the proverbial situation where you pull an ESF from Warp Gate and then go out and get gibbed by an ace. Earlier when we were talking about engagement radar and how engagement radar could be a tool for that. Tomcats have sort of been a tool for that up till now, because they sort of counter the system that aces use to do better than newer pilots.
Yeah. No, I get that. I totally get that. And one of the challenges with it is that, okay, so there's been multiple balancing attempts, right, for Tomcats over the years.
Right.
And one of them was to, make it so you have to maintain a lock. And that's really, really difficult for a new player to do. Unless it's like against other new players, or unless it's against people flying in like big groups of people, because then you have more time, like you're not getting shot at in a 1v1 situation, so people aren't trying to maneuver around you, they're just trying to run away. So like Connery, right, had the huge meta where Donna Frago, or whoever was running the scythe balls,
right,
and you would, so it was, the way that Tomcats were set up was better for veterans than it was for new players. And with these adjustments, it's definitely not as good for ESF in general. It'll be better for new players because they'll actually be able to fire off a shot. But the fact that it's a roll shift will hopefully make them more acceptable to use in the air. And if new players still want that, like, and I say new players, but it's more like players in general, like players who can't fly. If they want something that helps them in air combat against ESF, it'll be more about coyotes. And that's what coyotes were like supposed to be in the first place. Is something that weren't as obnoxious as Tomcats, but were still more user friendly. Given the homing mechanisms, and I think that'll be the big shift. If there is one, for new players being able to fly. And I think that coyotes are going to be more competitive, given the rest of the changes. Like, given that people will be more visible on the map, and just with the awareness increase, and you're less likely to get snuck up on. It's just, I think it's a good change overall. It feels like I'm spinning my wheels now, just talking.
I can jump back in.
But yeah, thanks.
I sort of saw Tomcats as, like, I guess coyotes might be taking that stepping stone now, but I kind of sort of philosophically seen Tomcats as sort of the one counter to the hover meta in general. And when I say the hover meta, I mean basically people using hover dueling as a way to individually sort of lock down in one place and defend themselves from whoever's attacking them. Or maybe two people doing it to each other in a duel. And it was sort of like the one counter to that. And with the Tomcats now out of the picture, it seems like hover meta is now sort of the objective best way to fly in Planetside. Like, that's the way it works. That's what everyone's doing and basically needs to do in order to learn how to fly properly. Because now there's no counter to it. It's just better than not doing it. So
I just don't agree that that was the counter in the first place. At
yeah,
least
no,
in...
it wasn't. I mean, it had a ton of flaws, and obviously, if an ace runs Tomcats, that, like, see what Don did, it just destroyed air on Connery. But it did function as a crutch for new players to sort of counter it, and that's sort of one of the things that it was able to do. And now there's nothing there, even though it did it in a terrible, shitty way that ruined the game for everyone. But now there's sort of now there's nothing in that void, and hover is just the way to go.
I don't know if I don't know. I don't know if I agree, because coyotes they're better against hover pilots. People who can maneuver around you, or people who are going behind you. Like, if I'm a new pilot and theoretically I don't know how to hover at all, I still know how to get close to somebody.
Right.
Like, by just driving straight towards them. This is why people like hate it when new players ram them and stuff. But that's what they do. Forward. That's their like only real method of that's their only understanding of ESF in general, is just
go forward.
Yeah, pretty much. So, and coyotes are more conducive to that. So, and I think they'll be more balanced overall, and that'll be I think it'll be a huge positive change for new players in particular. But I also feel that on the toxic side, whereas even if theoretically you had Tomcats that were like, if they were good for new players, which again I don't agree with, it'll create a better environment overall not having them. As the go-to tool.
No, I agree. I think coyotes do it way better, just because having to get in someone's face is, I mean, it's so much more, like, if you have the long reload time, then you're not just waiting for somebody you can't deal with to kill you. Like, they have to be able to get nose guns too, or you will out damage them. Yeah, and there's more risk involved because you have to get in their face. It's not like it doesn't completely shut down the hover meta, but if you leave yourself in a really exposed position, then a new player with coyotes could potentially burn you as much as an ace could. So I think that's cool. But I do think with Tomcats now out of the picture, even with coyotes, that I don't know, because for a really long time, I don't think, I guess formerly SOE really, I feel like they tried to ignore that hovering even existed. By sort of saying like, oh, we'll put it in the game, and then things like the ESF update didn't really address a lot of the problems that hovering actually had. And I guess I don't really know where I'm going with this, but
well, when you think about it, the hovering in general, the way that it was used in combat was a flaw. It's a flaw in the same way that tribes skiing is a flaw. But and they try to marginalize it because it is a big barrier to people's understanding of the flight in this game. It to me, it's like a flight in this game. I understand the arguments, but it's like, spacebar to jump, right? Spacebar to fly up, crouch to crouch, or control to crouch, crouch to fly down. It makes sense that like vehicles work like infantry, the air vehicles do, but the actual maneuver of getting yourself into hover mode was always the challenge, I think.
Right.
And if there was a way to embrace it, like to automatically put your thrusters into hover mode, I almost want to say that would be probably preferable to to the attempts to marginalize hovering over the years.
Okay, that was where I was going with this. You actually just fucking finished my point for me. I was going to be like, finish that up and be like, I think now hover is sort of more prominent now and harder to counter, that people should learn it, and I think the hardest thing for them to deal with and overcome in learning it is the goddamn reverse maneuver. And
yeah,
like, you nailed it on the head. Like, hover is intuitive and makes sense and it's fun to learn, but the reverse maneuver, like, I've taught so many people the reverse maneuver one-on-one, and it is a waste of everyone's time. Like, because it's like, not only, you're right, it's such a pain in the ass to learn, but also you're not any better for having learned it, because it's just something that you need to learn. Yeah, well, no, you're not even on par. You were literally no better, except it was just this barrier between learning, like, before you learn it, you don't know how to hover fight. After you learn it, you still don't know how to hover fight. But now you know how to get into hover. Like getting into hover and then not knowing how to hover fight doesn't help you in any way. It's just this barrier that you need to overcome on the way to learning how to hover fight. And I feel like, yeah, if there was, I think the reverse maneuver along with engagement radar is the right thing to hit in terms of closing the gap of the skill floor, or like lowering the skill floor so people can actually like learn to fly more often, because it's just this huge waste of time and it's so hard to learn. And I don't know, like a button that locks your thrusters or something, but
Well,
not in a way that aces could use it to do crazy shit. I don't know.
you know, even if aces could use it, I don't think that'd be like if we were somehow able to like I don't know how the control like how you do it from that side of things. I don't know. I just play with the numbers, but if we were able to make toggle analog, put people down for hover, because that's I mean, actually, would that be detrimental to you guys who have been playing for a while, or would it be benefit?
Well, the thing with that is that you want to be careful with is so much of the skill of hover fighting is there are these cardinal directions you have to deal with and movements and gravity that you have to play with when you're in a hover fight to actually keep your thrusters locked. And a lot of people think that those sort of limiting factors are really interesting. So you like having a button that just guarantees your thrusters are locked would kind of undermine a lot of the skill in hover fighting, and I don't think a lot of aces would like that. So if you were to have a button that just locked it could be throttle analog. That's fine. People, or it could be. I think a better button would be the X button because that's just it does the same thing as F right now, for some reason.
Yeah.
But if you were to have a button that just locked your thrusters, the important thing would be that it's really only used as a reverse maneuver substitute and not used to like completely undermine the skill of a hover fight. And that's where I think it's tricky, yeah. Because if you're in hover, like the four movements are spacebar and pitch down will keep your thrusters locked. Spacebar and pitch up will unlock your thrusters, and control and pitch up will lock your thrusters, but control and pitch down will unlock your thrusters. So all of those four movements you use to keep your thrusters either locked or unlocked, also keeping in mind that looking up will lock your thrusters and looking down will unlock them. So it's this constant battle of playing against your opponent, trying to stay lower than them so that you can look up at them and keep your thrusters locked without running into the ground, making the right movements to keep your thrusters locked. If you do accidentally unlock them, like trying to get them locked again and doing a reverse maneuver to try to minimize the damage. Like there's so much to that people really like. And you don't want to just have a button that's like, well, my thrusters are locked now, unless it's on unless it's like an ability that's on a cooldown. But even then, maybe you would still want to learn the reverse maneuver just in case it's on cooldown, you know?
Yeah, I think reverse maneuver makes things interesting. It definitely does. So if you can like make it less of a necessity to feel as if you're doing something useful in the air. Like you said that, hover fighting is going to be the only way to do things, but hopefully that's not the case. I think I consider that more, well, yeah, with Tomcats out of that picture, I guess it makes more sense. But I don't know. I'm kind of wondering how Coyotes will go and play into it.
Well, the other thing is there are 1,000 certs.
Yeah, so it's not exactly like a new player. Hey, just jump on board.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, though. A lot of people have also talked about just control schemes in general, like move mouse left and right, instead of or whatever. They want like more War Thunder oriented control schemes. What do you think about that?
So my gut feeling is no. But my being reasonable feeling is if you can make a control scheme that, because like my initial feeling when I got into an ESF was, why the hell is mouse left and right, roll left and right? Like that feels so weird. But now I'm used to it. So like my response is if you can find a control scheme that's still, I guess, is easy for aces to transition to and doesn't dampen the sort of skill of flying, but is also more easy to sort of like makes more sense in your brain naturally like a normal plane, then cool. If not, probably just leave it how it is.
Oh, I definitely don't want to. I wouldn't want to change personally the control scheme of vehicles that are currently in the air. I would like it. I mean, potentially to see other players have an alternative, like on PS4. You have a new player flying mode or something. I actually haven't played with it too much, but I guess it keeps you not being horrible or something in the air, and maybe it makes it easier. I would have to explore it a bit, but it's basically an easy button for players to learn how to fly. And yeah, okay. I wish I had more to talk about with that point because it probably means something. But if there was something like that that we can add to the PC version, it might be helpful. Don't think there's any hover flying involved in that on the PS4 version, but yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. It would be hard because it would probably, you wouldn't want it to give an advantage over the current model, obviously. And a disadvantage might be okay, but then you might have people just saying, no, you just want to use the default version. You don't want to learn this
now I
other
want to know what
version
it does.
that's like suboptimal.
Yeah, I really need to see what it does because yeah, because that's what it starts you out as. And it's probably just a crutch for controller use to make it easier, but I think it keeps you like aligned with the ground.
Okay.
But yeah, or like tries to rewrite your plane. But yeah, I need to look into that again.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, so probably not helpful to what we're talking about.
Maybe not. I don't know. Like if you were to do a totally new system, just because it's like learning to ride a totally different bicycle. I feel like that could be really hard because it would have to be equally as good as the current one if you were to make it an option. Because if it was any better, people would whine that, it's better. If it was any worse, then people would say, no, just use the original version. So that's my take on it, at least.
Yeah, we should get off that topic. It's killing things.
All right.
You done with yours, Ginger?
I guess one last question I'll have is because I had this whole topic on big shifts in the air game and big changes that I think that are maybe outside the scope of this patch, or maybe aren't, that I think are sort of going in the right direction. And I just want to ask, like, what you in the topic you said that this was patch 1.5, and I just want to know how, like, is this totally just numbers changes, or how far do you plan on going with air changes before you kind of move on?
Well, as far as okay, so one of the holdups, like I had an Air 2.0 document like written up, and it impacted air to ground, ground to air, and it's just all over the board. And honestly, there were some flaws with it, which were pointed out by other teammates or team members, and so I think that needs to get looked at again. But despite that, the dock in general, like there are adjustments that do need to be made to ground. I mean, Valkyrie needs some love, obviously. Liberator can use some love as well. And just some other things, but the holdup or the hang up that like the reason why it's just air to air changes at this point is because we really didn't want to like impact the construction system with some of the air to ground stuff, especially like if you look at Hornets, right? Hornets are pretty decent for killing certain construction objects right now, and if we were to if we didn't know kind of where they stood in the scheme of things, then we would have a hard time balancing like resistances properly, and we needed to get a better hold on just how the interplay was going to be, especially with like automated turrets and stuff. Like if it's like too impactful to the air to ground weapons, like do we really need to pull them back? It's just there's a lot of there was moving pieces with the construction system that we just didn't want to tamper with at the same time.
Settle a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because that's kind of always been the case for a lot of changes in the game in general. Like normally it was a process of like wait months and then look at how things are being impacted. But I think with me on the team now, it's there's been a little bit more freedom to make these changes more quickly. Just due to being a veteran with some experience in the actual in playing the game consistently. But yeah, so it's hopefully the process moves a little bit more, but or iterates a little bit more quickly, and it will. I have full confidence that it will. But yeah, the construction was it was way too many unknowns.
Yeah.
For us to just like change everything about about everything.
Yeah, that would have been hell to throw in a bunch of flak changes.
Yeah,
and
right. Is all
rocket
that.
pods, Hornets, just all that. I mean, pilots have been waiting the longest time for anything remotely air related to happen in terms of an update. So, after the really huge construction update, which I haven't done too much with it in terms of like on the ground. I mean, I've been flying around and kind of just passing by a lot of construction because there's so many damn flak turrets. But I think the construction update, in conjunction with what we'll see with this air update, should provide quite a new fun experience to just like what people were saying with the construction update. It was chaos when it first came out, and it was just fun because of that. Like everyone was experimenting, everyone was just going crazy. I think you'll see a little bit more of that with the air stuff, and then you'll see kind of the remnants of that from the construction update. So it'll probably be the one time you ever see that, where the air game and the ground game have really been revitalized in different ways at the same time. That would be my guess, at least. Anyways, I think we're about done with all our topics. Ginger, do you have anything else?
Nope.
All right, outro time.
All right. Well, don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Don't fucking leave yet. Don't do it.
Too late, they're gone.
No. Housekeeping is going to happen on the next episode in terms of like what we're doing and why we're back for season 3. So don't worry, we're going to cover it. We just wanted to get all of the stuff we just talked about out this episode. We wanted to save as much time as possible for it. For now, email us utrpodcast@gmail.com.
It's still the same. Oh my god.
utrpodcast@gmail.com. And these are you can email us. We'll talk about your email and use them for the topic. The new format of the show hasn't explicitly been decided, but let's just say that the email topics can be Planetside related, or they can not be Planetside related. And we'll potentially bring up your emails, and even if we don't, we will still respond to them. So it is always worthwhile emailing us. Apart from that, these episodes are going to be posted on a new YouTube channel that's just for the podcast. But you can find my Hater and Wrel's YouTube channels in the description for this video. Or if you're on iTunes, whoa, hello, that was a noise. Or if you're on iTunes, it sucks to suck. And we are also live on a website at undertheradarpodcast.com. I think that's all I got. Unless I'm forgetting something, Hater.
Did you mention the Twitch? I mean, we haven't streamed anything, but we will probably be streaming a little bit more often in the future once that gets ironed out. So
yeah, we're ironing out streaming the podcast too. So that might happen. Also, iTunes won't be up yet at the time that this podcast gets posted to the website.
But it'll be on YouTube and the site at least.
Yes. All right, that's all we got. Thank you, Wrel, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. Where can people find you?
On the internet.
On the internet?
Everywhere. He's everywhere on the internet.
Is it like YouTube/Wrel? I'm assuming most of the people who watch this are probably just going to be your viewers, but
I feel like I don't
polite.
even have to link to his YouTube because anyone who's played Planetside knows who Wrel is.
Yeah. If you really have an interest, you can visit youtube.com/warpathrel, and that's my channel. Or tweet me, Twitter/RelPlays or Facebook/RelPlays, or go to rel.tv. There's a lot of places, some of which are actually most of which have varying levels of neglect. So, and just visit YouTube maybe if you care, and if you don't, that's fine too.
Okay. Well, thank you all for watching, and remember to keep it. Hater, you say
the radar.
Excellent.
Damn it! It's not as good as Roids.
So that whole section I had where I was failing to explain the third idea, just cut it. Just everything after, hey, do you guys want to talk about the construction update? to me just falling over
Get
my
rid of
face.
it.
Just cut it out.
That's probably a good idea.
I was
No,
awful.
because I feel like I was, yeah, a little lost too.
Yeah.
That might be, I mean, a good idea on that, but I think my internet like derped for a bit, and Ginger was robot voicing for a bit, so it might not have even gotten some of it.
All right, excellent.
You're like, yes,
that
save
covers
myself.
that point. Oh my god, I'm sorry.
But this is going in the bloopers, so now that everyone's listening to
No,
it, they're gonna be like,
everyone
what part where Ginger
What
was
part?
talking about some stupid shit? What? Where is it?
I was trying to explain something, guys, and it didn't make. Promise it made sense in my brain 2 days ago.
He was
But I
asking why hornets and tomcats aren't doing the thing, and then
Oh,
you've heard of the birds and the bees before, right?
oh yeah, no.
Yeah, totally.
Sweet love. Oh my god.
You know, those players who want to play ESF more like Warframe or more Warframe. Yeah. Everybody's everybody's a ninja with a sword that's just jumping around all over the place. No,
Please.
War Thunder.
Air 2.0.
Yeah, that's it. Actually, it
Ninja
just
swords.
brings up Warframe. It just closes the game down, brings up Warframe, you jump in, and then you have to grind. You just have to grind nonstop.